The massive space station rotated slowly against the star field, its metal corridors humming with alien voices and the constant buzz of energy fields. Kim Woo adjusted his worn briefcase as he walked through the detention center security. Checkpoint. The scanners beeped, examining every molecule of his Earth-made clothing with suspicious precision. Another human lawyer, muttered the spider-like security officer. Its 8 eyes glowing amber in the dim light. Third one this week. Your kind. Keeps getting rested. Wu said nothing. He'd learned that arguing with aliens on Nexus Station only made things worse. The detention center stretched ahead of him like a metallic maze, filled with holding cells that housed criminals from across the galaxy. Purple-skinned Volden sat next to crystal-bodied shimmers, while massive rock creatures called granite. Folk took up entire cells by themselves. The guard leading him was Velta, a tall reptilian alien with scales that changed color based on his mood. Right now, they were a dull green, meaning boredom mixed with mild annoyance. Cell 47, Velta announced, stopping before a reinforced door. You're a newest failure of a client. The energy barrier flickered off, and Wu stepped inside. The cell was small, barely large enough for 2 people to sit comfortably. A single bench ran along one wall, and a tiny window showed the swirling nebula beyond the station. The woman sitting on the bench looked up as he entered. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 30, with short black hair that looked like it had been cut with a knife. Her clothes were torn and dirty. Standard prisoner gray that had seen better days, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. They were alert, calculating, scanning him from head to toe in the space of a heartbeat. I'm Kim Woo, your defense attorney, he said, settling onto the bench beside her. The metal was cold even through his jacket. Prisoner 47, she replied simply. Her voice was steady, controlled, not what he expected from someone facing 20 years in an alien prison. Wu opened his tablet, the screen casting a pale blue glow. In the dim cell, the charges are serious, smuggling advanced weapons technology to the outer colonies, class a felony under galactic trade law. They're saying you had enough plasma rifles to arm a small rebellion. Through the cell's energy barrier, he could see Velta listening to their conversation. The alien guard's scales had shifted to yellow, indicating amusement. Humans, Velta said, his voice carrying the typical reptilian hiss, always trying. These small-time smuggling jobs. Your species thinks you're so clever, but you always get caught. Other guards had gathered now, drawn by the entertainment of watching another human face galactic justice. A floating robot with multiple arms hovered nearby, its sensors recording everything. 2 more reptilian guards flanked a massive insectoid creature whose clicking language sounded like angry machinery. Last week, 3 humans tried to smuggle medical supplies. One guard said, the week before, to more with illegal mining equipment. Your people never learn. Wu had heard this before. Earth was still new to galactic society. Barely 50 years since first contact. Most aliens saw humans as primitive, reckless, always trying to get rich quick through illegal schemes. It didn't help that many humans who made it to the outer systems were desperate colonists or fortune seekers. But something about this woman bothered him. She wasn't crying, wasn't begging for help, wasn't even asking about her chances. She just sat there, watching and listening. The evidence seems solid. Wu continued, scrolling through the files. They caught you red-handed on a cargo ship leaving Earth orbit. The weapons were hidden in medical supply containers. Interesting, she said. Just that one word. Interesting how? Instead of answering, she turned to look out the tiny window. A patrol ship was approaching the station, its lights blinking as it requested docking permission. The ship was sleek, clearly military, with the distinctive markings of the Galactic Enforcement Division. Tell me about the arrest procedure, she said suddenly. Wu frowned. What do you mean? How did they process the evidence? Who was present during the search? What protocols did they follow? These weren't the questions a smuggler would ask. Smugglers wanted to know about plea deals, about reduced sentences, about whether their lawyers could get them out. They didn't care about procedures. Why does that matter? Wu asked. She finally looked at him directly, and he saw something in her eyes. That made him uncomfortable. Intelligence, purpose. This wasn't a desperate criminal. This was someone with a plan. It might matter more than you think, she said quietly. Outside the cell, Velta's scales had shifted to orange, indicating growing interest. The alien was leaning closer to the energy barrier, trying to hear their conversation. Prisoner 47. Velta called out, "You should listen to your lawyer. Confess now, and maybe you'll only get 15 years instead of 20. Keep playing games. And you'll die in prison." The woman who called herself Prisoner 47 didn't even glance at the guard. She was studying Wu now, as if deciding whether to trust him with something important. "Mr. Kim," she said, "I think this case is going to be more complicated than you realize." The next morning, we returned to find the detention center buzzing with activity. 3 massive cargo ships had docked overnight, their hulls scarred from meteor impacts and plasma fire. Security drones swarmed round them like metallic insects, scanning every inch for contraband. "Busy night," Velta commented as he led Wu through the corridors. The reptilian guard's scales were bright red today, indicating excitement. "Caught to more smuggling rings. Your species really doesn't learn." In the distance, Wu could hear the mechanical whirring of interrogation robots preparing for another round of questioning. The sound always made his skin crawl. When he entered cell 47, the woman was sitting in exactly the same position as yesterday. But now she had something in her hands, a small piece of metal that looked like it had been torn from the wall. "Where did you get that?" Wu asked, settling down beside her. "Maintenance robot dropped it," she said simply. But Wu noticed how expertly she was examining the fragment. She turned it over in her fingers like someone who understood technology, not like a desperate smuggler. "I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," she continued, "about the cargo manifest. How exactly did they process it?" Wu pulled out his tablet and scrolled through the arrest report. "Standard procedure. The enforcement team boarded your ship, scanned the containers, found the weapons hidden inside medical supplies." "Which enforcement team? What do you mean?" "Names, badge numbers. Who was the lead officer?" Wu stared at her. "In 3 years of defending smugglers, pirates, and con artists, none of them had ever asked for a specific officer identification. They usually wanted to know if the officers could be bribed or intimidated." Commander Zixtel led the raid. Wu read from his tablet, supported by officers Murdoch and Villainix. "Standard 3 alien team." Non nodded slowly, as if filing away the information and the scanning equipment they used. "Model X7 contraband detector. Military grade. Interesting. Those scanners can differentiate between medical isotopes and weapons-grade plasma. Very sophisticated." Wu's frown deepened. "How do you know about scanner specifications?" Lucky guess. But it wasn't a guess. She was rattling off technical details like someone who'd used the equipment before. Her questions weren't random either. They were following a pattern, building towards something. Through the energy barrier, Wu could see the daily shift change beginning. Alien guards moved through the corridors in precise formations, their various species creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. Floating security drones accompanied them, their sensors constantly sweeping for threats. "Tell me about the chain of custody," Na said suddenly. "The what?" After they seized the evidence. "Who handled it? Where was it stored? What documentation did they create? These weren't smuggler questions. These were the questions a lawyer would ask. Or a cop. I don't understand why you need to know this, Wu said. Na leaned back against the metal wall, her eyes focused on something beyond the cell. Maybe because the whole case smells wrong. Wrong how? Think about it. If you were smuggling weapons, would you hide them in medical containers, go into colonies that desperately need medicine? Wu had to admit she had a point. The outer colonies were constantly short of medical supplies. Hiding weapons in medical containers would be discovered quickly when doctors tried to treat patients. And another thing, Na continued. Why would a weapons smuggler use a cargo ship with transponder codes that trace directly back to Earth? That's like leaving a signature at a crime scene. Before Wu could respond, voices echoed from the corridor outside. The alien prosecutors were arriving for their daily rounds, their footsteps clicking against the metal floor in distinctive patterns. The human lawyers are here, came a voice dripping with condescension. It belonged to Prosecutor HFY, a tall blue-skinned alien with fur arms and eyes like black diamonds. Come to play at Reeler again. His companion, Prosecutor HFY, was a floating jellyfish-like creature whose transparent body pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. The legal system is so primitive. HFY's voice came through a translation device. They still use paper documents and verbal testimony, like children playing with toy courts. HFY agreed. The two prosecutors stopped outside cell 47, clearly enjoying their daily ritual of mocking human legal capabilities. But Na was watching them with laser-like focus. Her eyes moved from HFY to HFY, memorizing every detail of their appearance, their mannerisms, the way they carried themselves. She was cataloging them like a hunter studying prey. Your client is particularly pathetic, HFY said to Wu. Caught red-handed with enough weapons to start a war, and she won't even give us a real name. Humans have no concept of honor in defeat. HFY added, its body flashing orange with amusement. In civilized species, criminals confess when caught. Na said nothing, but Wu noticed her hands were clenched into fists. Whatever game she was playing, the prosecutors were part of it. 20 years in a galactic prison. HFY continued. She'll be an old woman before she sees Earth again. If she lives that long. The prosecutors moved on, their laughter echoing down the corridor. But Na kept watching until they disappeared completely. Interesting, she murmured. What's interesting, prosecutor? HFY's briefcase. Did you notice the security lock? Wu hadn't noticed anything special about it. What about it? Military grade. Same type used by Galactic Intelligence. Curious thing for a civilian prosecutor to carry. She was right. Now that he thought about it, everything about this case felt wrong. The evidence was too perfect, the rest too clean. And his client knew way too much about things she shouldn't understand. Who are you really? Wu asked quietly. Na smiled for the first time since he'd met her. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Someone who's very good at her job. The third day brought chaos to Nexus Station. Wu could hear it before he even reached the detention center. Alarms blaring, security drones racing through corridors, and the heavy footsteps of enforcement teams responding to some emergency. Through the station's massive viewing windows, he could see 3 warships approaching, their weapon systems powered but not yet targeting the station. Galactic Intelligence, Velta explained as he escorted Wu through the enhanced security checkpoints. The reptilian guard's scales were shifting rapidly between orange and red, indicating high stress. They're conducting some kind of investigation. Very secretive, very dangerous. Additional security measures had been implemented overnight. Scanning drones hovered at every intersection, their blue beams analyzing everyone who passed. Automated gun turrets had emerged from hidden panels in the walls, tracking movement with mechanical precision. The entire station felt like a fortress preparing for a war. When Wu entered Cell 47, he found Na standing at the tiny window, watching the approaching warships with intense focus. She seemed calmer than everyone else on the station, as if she'd been expecting this development. "Busy morning," she said without turning round. "The entire station is on high alert," Wu replied, settling onto the bench. "Galactic intelligence is here. The gods are terrified. They should be." Something in her tone made him look up sharply. She was still watching the warships, but now she was smiling slightly. Not the expression of a prisoner facing life in jail. "Now," he said carefully, using the name she'd finally given him yesterday. "What's really going on here?" She turned from the window, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked directly into his eyes without any pretense or games. What he saw there stopped his breath. Authority. Command presence. The look of someone who was used to being in charge. "My real name is Li Nao," she said quietly. "I'm a senior federal prosecutor from Earth's Galactic Crimes Division." Wu's tablet slipped from his hands and clattered to the floor. "What? I've been undercover for 6 months. Investigating a smuggling ring that's been moving weapons throughout this sector. The real criminals aren't in prison, Mr. Kim. Some of them are walking these corridors every day, wearing prosecutor badges and judge robes." She reached into her torn shirt and pulled out something that made Wu's heart skip. A small device, no bigger than his thumb. Made of the same advanced materials used in Earth's most classified technology. She pressed her finger to it, and suddenly a holographic display appeared between them, showing her real identification. Senior Federal Prosecutor Lina, Galactic Crimes Division, security clearance, ultra, current assignment, deep cover investigation, Operation Clean Sweep. "This is impossible," Wu whispered. "I've been tracking weapon shipments across 17 star systems," Na continued, her voice now carrying the authority of her real position. "The operation is massive. Someone with access to military-grade scanning equipment. Someone who knows exactly how to bypass security protocols. Someone who can manipulate evidence and wrest records outside their cell." The morning shift change was beginning, but something was different. Instead of the usual casual banter between guards, everyone was moving with military precision. The floating security drones had doubled in number, and we could see armed enforcement officers at every checkpoint. "The weapons I was supposedly smuggling," Na continued, "they were bait. I planted them on that cargo ship, knowing they'd be discovered. I needed to get inside this station's detention system to access their internal networks. You got yourself arrested on purpose. Best way to investigate corruption is from the inside. And I found plenty." She gestured toward the corridor where they could hear footsteps approaching. Heavy boots, multiple sets, moving with purpose. Prosecutor HFY has been selling confiscated weapons to rebel groups in the Outer Rim, Na said quietly. Prosecutor Yelenyx has been manipulating evidence in smuggling cases, letting the real criminals go free in exchange for payments. Judge Murtex has been reducing sentences for anyone willing to pay the right price. The footsteps were getting closer. Wu could now hear voices, alien voices speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "How do you know all this?" Na smiled grimly. "Because for 6 months I've been recording everything. Every conversation, every illegal transaction. Every piece of evidence they've destroyed or fabricated. The device in my cell wall. It's been transmitting data to Earth intelligence every night." The footsteps stopped outside their cell. Through the energy barrier, we could see Prosecutor HFY and Prosecutor Yelenyx approaching. But they weren't alone. 3 Galactic intelligence officers accompanied them, tall, intimidating figures in black armor whose faces were hidden behind advanced tactical helmets. HFY's blue skin had turned pale, almost white. His forearms were trembling slightly. As he clutched his briefcase, yellow and excess bioluminescent patterns were flashing erratically, indicating extreme distress. Prisoner 47, HFY called out, his voice lacking its usual condescension. "You have visitors." Na stood up slowly, straightening her torn prison uniform. Suddenly, she didn't look like a prisoner anymore. She looked like exactly what she was, a federal prosecutor about to make the biggest arrest of her career. "Actually," she said, loud enough for everyone in the corridor to hear, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about who the real prisoners are here." She pressed her identification device again, and this time the holographic display was visible to everyone outside the cell. The Galactic intelligence officers immediately stepped forward, their weapon systems powering up. KEX single quotes VAR dropped his briefcase. Yelenix's body went completely transparent with shock. Lena, senior federal prosecutor of Galactic Crimes Division, she announced formally, "And you're all under arrest." The station's alarms suddenly changed pitch, switching from general alert to full lockdown protocol. Emergency barriers began sealing corridors as the investigation Na had been building for 6 months finally went active. "Mr. Kim," Na said, turning back to Wu with a slight smile, "I think I'm going to need a different kind of legal assistance now." The main courtroom of Nexus Station had been transformed into something resembling a war room. Security drones hovered at every entrance, their weapon systems active and tracking. The massive chamber, which normally held routine trade disputes, now hosted the biggest corruption trial in galactic history. Wu stood beside Na at the prosecution table, still struggling to process how completely his world had changed. Yesterday, he was a simple defense attorney. Today, he was assisting a federal prosecutor in taking down an interstellar criminal network. "Are you ready for this?" Na asked quietly, adjusting the advanced holographic display system that Earth intelligence had provided. Her torn prison uniform had been replaced with a crisp prosecutor's suit, and she looked every inch the federal agent she truly was. "I've never handled anything like this," Wu admitted, watching as the defendants were brought in under heavy guard. Prosecutor HFY walked with his forearms shackled behind him, his blue skin now a sickly gray color. Prosecutor Yelenix floated in a specialized containment field, its bioluminescent patterns dim and erratic. Judge Murtex, a massive rock-like creature, was being transported on a hover platform, his movements restricted by energy restraints. But they weren't the only ones. The investigation had spread like wildfire through the station's command structure. Station Commander Vexenal sat in the Defendant section, his reptilian features showing no emotion. 3 more judges, 5 prosecutors, and even the head of station security had been arrested. "The evidence speaks for itself," Na said, activating the holographic display. The center of the courtroom filled with floating data streams, financial records, and communication logs. "Mr. Kim, if you would begin with Exhibit A." Wu took a deep breath and stood. The presiding judge was Chief Justice Collivan, elderly for Aunt Alien known for his fairness. His presence alone indicated how seriously the Galactic Council was taking this case. "Your Honor." Wu began, his voice carrying through the chambers. "Advanced acoustics. Exhibit A consists of financial records seized from 17 different banking institutions across the galaxy." The holographic display zoomed in on a complex web of transactions, credits flowing from smuggler accounts to official government accounts, then being laundered through fake corporations and shell companies. These records show systematic payments to Prosecutor HFY over a period of 3 years. Wu continued. Total amount, 2.7 million galactic credits, Kexavares defense attorney, a tall insectoid alien, clicked rapidly in protest. Your Honor, these records could be fabricated. Human technology is not sophisticated enough to. Objection sustained. Nor interrupted smoothly. If the defense wishes to question the authenticity of Earth intelligence data, they're welcome to submit it to independent analysis. She activated another section of the display, showing the digital forensics analysis that had been performed on every piece of evidence. The technology was impressive even by galactic standards, quantum-level verification that made forgery impossible. Exhibit B, now announced, communication logs between Judge Mertex and the actual leaders of the smuggling ring, the courtroom filled with the sounds of recorded conversations. Mertex's gravelly voice discussing reduced sentences, dismissed charges, and evidence that would mysteriously disappear. The rock-like alien's defense attorney tried to claim the communications were taken out of context, but the recordings were damning. Payment received. Mertex's voice echoed through the chamber. The human smugglers will be released with time served. Make sure the weapons reach the Outer Rim colonies as planned. A murmur ran through the courtroom. Even the alien spectators seemed shocked by the brazen nature of the corruption. Exhibit C. Nor continued, shipping manifests showing the actual movement of weapons throughout the sector. The holographic display now showed the galaxy itself, with red lines indicating weapon shipments and blue dots marking cropped officials. The scope was staggering. The network reached into 12 different star systems and involved officials from 6 different species. The defendants weren't just taking bribes, Na explained. They were actively participating in arms trafficking. Weapons confiscated from one smuggler were sold to another. Evidence from closed cases was recycled and used in new operations. Station Commander Vexenol's defense attorney, a floating gas creature, spoke in a whistling voice. These are serious accusations. But where is the proof that my client knew about? Na cut him off by activating a new display. Exhibit D. Surveillance footage from the defendant's own office. The courtroom watched as holographic recording showed Vexenol meeting with known criminals, accepting payments, and personally overseeing the transfer of confiscated weapons to smuggler ships. The surveillance system the defendant thought he had disabled was actually recording everything. Na explained. Earth intelligence has been monitoring this station for months. Wu found his confidence growing as he watched the evidence unfold. Your Honor, Exhibit E shows the financial impact of this corruption on legitimate trade and colonial settlements. The display shifted to show colony worlds that had been destabilized by the weapons trafficking. Settlements that had descended into civil war because of the advanced weapons that should have been destroyed instead of sold. The defendants' actions have resulted in over 50,000 civilian casualties, Wu continued. Their greed has destabilized entire star systems. Judge Mertex's attorney tried one final protest. Your Honor, even if some irregularities occurred, the punishment being suggested is excessive for irregularities. Na's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. She activated the final display, showing the complete scope of the criminal network. This wasn't irregularities. This was systematic, organized crime reaching the highest levels of galactic government. The defendants didn't just accept bribes. They ran a criminal empire that spanned dozens of worlds. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, communication logs, surveillance footage, shipping manifests, and testimony from dozens of witnesses across the galaxy. Every piece of evidence had been verified by multiple independent sources. Chief Justice Colvin studied the displays for long minutes. His forearms crossed in concentration. The chamber was silent except for the hum of the holographic systems and the distant sounds of the space station's operations. The evidence presented is compelling. he finally said, and the scope of the corruption is unlike anything this court has seen. The defendants sat in stunned silence. Their attorneys had run out of objections. The web of evidence was too complete, too detailed, too carefully documented to dispute. Miss Lee. Chief Justice Colvin continued, "This investigation represents a remarkable achievement in interstellar law enforcement. The cooperation between Earth intelligence and the galactic justice system has been exemplary." Now nodded respectfully. "Thank you. Your Honor, justice knows no species boundaries." The defendants were about to learn that corruption, regardless of which planet you came from, carried the same penalty throughout the galaxy. The Great Hall of Nexus Station had never seen anything like this. Representatives from 47 different species filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a living rainbow of galactic civilization. Floating jellyfish-like creatures drifted near the ceiling, while massive rock beings took up entire sections of seating. The air hummed with translation devices working overtime to convert dozens of languages into understandable speech. Now stood at the center of it all, no longer the disheveled prisoner from cell 47. Her prosecutor uniform was crisp and professional, the golden badge of the Galactic Crimes Division gleaming on her chest. Behind her, holographic displays showed the complete scope of the investigation, a three-dimensional web of corruption that had infected governments across the sector. Honored members of the Galactic Tribunal, Na began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. What we present today is not merely a case of individual corruption, but systematic criminal enterprise that threatened the stability of interstellar commerce itself. Chief Justice Colvin presided from the elevated tribunal bench, flanked by judges representing 12 different species. His forearms moved in ritual gestures as he spoke. Prosecutor Linar. "This tribunal has reviewed your evidence over 7 standard days. We are prepared to hear your final presentation." Now activated the holographic system, and the chamber filled with floating data streams. Transaction records flowed like rivers of light, connecting bank accounts across dozens of star systems. Communication logs played in multiple alien languages, showing the defendants coordinating their criminal activities. The defendants created a network that spanned 17 star systems. Now explained, gesturing to the display, they weren't just accepting bribes. They were actively destabilizing governments, fueling civil wars and undermining the peace treaties that hold our galaxy together. Wu watched from the prosecutor's table, still amazed by the scale of what they'd uncovered. The investigation had revealed corruption reaching into the Galactic Council itself, with officials from species humanity had barely met involved in the conspiracy. The financial records show over 15 million galactic credits in illegal transactions. Na continued, weapons that should have been destroyed were instead sold to the highest bidder. Evidence from closed cases was recycled and used to frame innocent beings. The defendants sat in a specially constructed containment area, their various forms restrained by species-appropriate security measures. Ex-prosecutor HFY's blue skin had turned completely gray, while ex-judge Mertek's rocky exterior showed stress fractures from the gravity of his situation. But the most serious charge, Na said, her voice growing harder, is treason against the Galactic Peace Accords. The defendants knowingly sold weapons to rebel groups actively fighting legitimate governments. She activated a new section of the display, showing colony worlds torn apart by civil war. Settlements burning under attack from weapons that should never have reached civilian populations. The colony of New Geneva was attacked with plasma weapons traced directly to contraband seized by the defendants. Now explained. 3,000 civilians died in that attack. Children, families, people who came to the Outer Rim seeking a better life. A murmur of anger rippled through the chamber, even among species that had little contact with humans. The deliberate targeting of civilians was considered the worst possible crime. Chief Justice Kolovan's expression was grim as he reviewed the evidence displays. The scope of this conspiracy is unprecedented in galactic history. The tribunal finds the evidence overwhelming and indisputable. The chamber fell silent as the judges conferred among themselves. Their various forms of communication created a strange symphony. Clicking sounds from insectoid species, harmonic tones from crystalline beings, and the deep rumbles of rock-like creatures. The defendants are guilty on all charges, Chief Justice Kolovan announced. The sentences are as follows: immediate exile to the prison colony of Tartarus 7. All assets seized and distributed as reparations to affected colonies, permanent. Ban from holding any government position in galactic space. The defendant's reaction was immediate. HFY collapsed, his forearms unable to support his weight. Yellow excess bioluminescent patterns flashed in distress while Murtex simply sat, in stony silence, accepting his fate. But Chief Justice Kolovan wasn't finished. He stood, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of formal address. This tribunal must also acknowledge an unprecedented debt of gratitude to Earth's justice system. The chamber stirred with surprise. Formal apologies from the Galactic Tribunal were rare, usually reserved for the most serious diplomatic incidents. We have long underestimated human investigative capabilities, Kolovan continued. This investigation represents the finest example of interstellar law enforcement in galactic history. ProsecutorHFY has demonstrated that humanity's commitment to justice rivals that of any species in known space. Not bowed respectfully, but Wu could see the pride in her eyes. Not personal pride, but pride in what humanity had accomplished. The Galactic Council formally apologizes to Earth for our previous dismissive attitudes toward human law enforcement, Kolovan concluded. We request that Earth establish a permanent office within the Galactic Justice Department. As the tribunal session ended, beings from across the galaxy approached Na to congratulate her. Species that had never acknowledged human capability were now asking about cooperation agreements and training exchanges. Outside the courthouse, Wu and Na walked through the station's observation deck, watching the massive cleanup operation taking place. Dozens of ships were being seized. Corrupt officials from multiple worlds were being arrested, and new security protocols were being implemented throughout the sector. I have to ask, Wu said as they watched Earth patrol ships, working alongside alien enforcement vessels. Why did you take such a dangerous assignment? You could have been killed, or worse, disappeared without anyone knowing what happened to you. Na smiled. The first completely relaxed expression he'd seen from her. Someone had to do it. For 50 years, other species have seen humans as either primitive or reckless. They thought we stumbled around the galaxy making amateur mistakes. She gestured to the ships outside, where human and alien crews were working together with unprecedented cooperation. I wanted to show them that humans don't stumble around anywhere. When something is wrong, when someone is being hurt, we investigate. We dig deeper. We find the truth. No matter how well it's hidden or how powerful the people trying to hide. A message alert chimed on Wu's communicator. Reports were coming in from across the sector. Corrupt networks being exposed. Weapons caches being seized. Colonies being liberated from criminal control. The network is completely destroyed, Wu said, reading the updates, and requests for human investigators are coming in from 12 different star systems. Na nodded with satisfaction. Humanity's reputation has changed. We're no longer seen as the newcomers who don't understand how things work. We're the species you call when you need the truth uncovered. As they watched, a massive Earth cruiser approached the station, its hull bearing the insignia of the new Human Galactic Joint Investigation Force, the HFY. Humans being dismissed, as primitive was over. The galaxy had learned that when it came to finding the truth, humanity would go to any length, face any danger, and take on any enemy, no matter how powerful or well-connected they might be. The end.